inevitability of the life cycle is that you're born, you live however many years you live, you get older, and you die. And sorry if that comes as a surprise to you, but it really shouldn't. So as runners, we all know we're getting older, and we all know certain things are going to change, but it's what we do about it that's going to define our running journeys. So when I say that there's big problems with getting older, what I really mean is that they're only going to be problems if you let them be. And with these tips, we're not going to let them be. Right? Now, before we get started on what are the big problems that I see with getting older as a runner, there is a caveat to all of this, because there is one solution that sits above it all, and it's scientifically proven. So whenever I make a point about this is a big problem, just think this is the solution, or one of the solutions, so I don't have to keep mentioning it. And that solution is resistance training. You see, resistance training has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to slow the aging process. There are studies, multiple studies now, that have shown that if you resistance train during your week whilst you're training your cardiovascular fitness, then you are going to significantly benefit and slow the aging process. But it doesn't have to be dumbbells, right? It can be body weight exercises, resistance bands, kettlebells, Pilates, yoga, or even karate. I made that one up. I don't know. That probably is good for you, but it's not resistance training. I've been watching too much Cobra Kai. In truth, anything where you apply resistance to your body, to your muscles, that's going to help. It's going to help with your running in general anyway, and it's going to help slow the aging process. So let's take that as the caveat. That's the answer to all of the big problems, but there are other answers. So let's get on it, and let's start with the first big problem as I see it. So, while we're here about halfway through my long run, I thought here's the perfect opportunity for us to touch on the number one worry, I think, that all runners have with getting older in terms of your performance, and that is that there is a considerable reduction in everything measurable, all performance indicators and measurements, like being able to run a certain pace or being able to run a certain time in a certain race, VO2 max, lactate threshold. They are all going to decline as we get older, and while I'm going to give you the tips later on throughout this video of how to combat that physically, we probably need to start thinking about how we frame all of this psychologically, all of this mentally to start with, and that's what we're going to talk about in point one when I finish this run off. Alright, here's the thing. Running is with me for life, absolutely no doubt about that. It's part of my journey, it's part of who I am, it's part of who Mary is. So I'm going to take the peaks and I'm going to take the troughs. I'm going to have good performances and I'm going to have bad performances. But I'm going to also accept, inevitably as I'm getting older, performances aren't going to be what they used to be to a certain extent. Let me frame that for you. So the first thing we might need to do is look at the words performance and success and maybe redefine them a bit. Because if our success is being able to run a certain pace or a 1:30 half marathon, and our performance is having a VO2 max of 60, then these are outcomes. What if success was getting out running 2 to 3 times a week, or being able to do some races that you want to do each year because you continue to train? There are loads of ways to redefine what success and performance is that won't leave you feeling disappointed as you age. But one thing I do, and anybody else not able to say the word do without laughing internally. Anyway, one thing I do is that I compare myself to myself using this clever little trick that I decided upon many years ago. What I decided so that I could compare myself with myself is to look at percentages when I race. And the way that works is, say you're in an age group of 20 people and you finish 10th, you're 50% in that age group. But let's say you're in an age group with 100 people because it's a bigger race and you finish 48, you're 48% in that age group. And each time you do that, it helps compare you versus you and you versus people of a similar age, if that's what you wanted. But as I say, I don't even put too much stock in that, because on any given day in a race of 20 in your age group, you could have 9 ex-pros and finish 19th because of that. So, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. But I just wanted to try and help deal with that psychological aspect of the inevitability of slowing down. But it's all good. We're gonna do it for life, right? Look who I've found here, just out on her run after I've finished mine. There's Mare out on her run, and this seemed like as good a time as any to talk about the next big problem as I see it with getting older and running, and that is that you don't recover as easily as we used to. It's just harder, but I'll tell you what, there are things that you can do, and we're going to show you what they are after Mary's long run. Basically, we're going to show you how we recover. Long gone are the days that you can just get in from a run and then sit down and have a cup of tea and do nothing to kind of recover from that run. Certainly for us anyway. By the way, I probably should mention that Mary's about 27 or so K into a 35 kilometer run. So this is her biggest run before Bangkok Marathon, which is coming up in 3 weeks. By the way, there will be a video about that, but it's as good a time as any to talk about how we actively recover, because this is going to be the priority after this run, making sure Mary's legs are okay to start the taper. Taper, Mary.
Bring it on.
So we finished. How far did you do?
I did 32 kilometers.
And now it's time to start the active recovery.
Yeah.
Okay. And our active recovery starts with a good stretching routine, as Mary's demonstrating now coming back from her long run. If you feel like it's beneficial, for me, it's beneficial, and it's part of the process that we go through. So we start with a good stretch routine, and if you want a good stretch routine, I'll link you one just above here. Mary, what other things do you do for your recovery?
I wear calf compresses.
You do?
I foam roll. And I even have once monthly dry needling just to make sure everything's in check. And that's how I actively recover.
Something that has always been a worry for runners as they age is the reduction in muscle mass and strength that's likely to happen. And I must admit that this hasn't really ever been an issue for me, considering I look like a shaved bird. But the evidence is also clear on this one that muscle mass in runners tends to actually stay pretty constant as we age. Muscle density in runners has been shown to be similar in 30 to 40-year-old runners as in 70-year-olds. What actually happens is the amount of motor units, which are the motor neurons that stimulate the muscles, they reduce as you get older. So same muscle density, less motor units to stimulate the muscles. But it's also been found that the more consistently you train, the more healthy and abundant your working motor units are, all the way to masters athletes at 80 years old and beyond. Are they the same as they were when they were at 20? No, but they're very much more healthy than a sedentary 80-year-old. So simply staying consistent is the key here. As I said a few videos ago, you don't stop moving because you get old. You get old because you stop moving. One of the worries I hear a lot when it comes to getting older in general, not just when you're training and getting older as a runner, but getting older in general, is that your metabolism is going to slow down, and then as a result you are going to gain weight. Now, to a certain extent, if the metabolism slows down, there will potentially be weight gain. But there are a lot of things that we can talk about that A, could negate this, and B, can just allay fears because they might not necessarily be factually correct. So let's just allay fears on the first two, is that the metabolism slowdown happens a lot later than most people think. It tends to really start slowing down after 60, not 40 or 35 like some people think. And along with happening later, it also happens more slowly than people think. It's not like a get to 50 and bosh off a cliff. And I suppose the obvious thing that you can do to kind of combat the metabolism slowing down is keep the metabolism high yourself. And the ways that you can do this are, as you would probably expect. Exercise is very important. Drinking lots of water, keeping hydrated, super important. But another way to keep a metabolism high is actually eating a breakfast, maintaining your food intake throughout the day, because that's what keeps that metabolism ticking over. Some people often, I suppose, mistakenly think that they can skip breakfast and that will be okay. But here's the kicker, and it's very counterintuitive. When you skip breakfast, your body goes into this kind of homeostatic response. So the body's always looking for balance. It's always looking to maintain balance. So when you skip breakfast, because the body thinks there's no calories coming in, it slows the metabolism to kind of counteract the fact that there's no calories coming in, so that the next time calories come in, it stores more and it won't burn off as much because the metabolism is slower. So it's actually the opposite effect of what you think would happen if you start skipping meals. So actually, a good way of not gaining weight and keeping your metabolism high is to keep eating, and keep eating well, healthily, regularly and happily, along with the exercise and the water and all of the other stuff.
Welcome to my easy Friday 5k. In fact, you know what? I'm just gonna stop my watch and talk to you here because I want to get this bit right. On my easy Friday 5k, it seems quite appropriate to talk about as you get older, not that I'm old, but you know what I'm saying. As you get older, the risk of injury dramatically increases if. Now, I'll always say if because what I'm going to do is give you the ways that you can reduce the risk of injury as you get older. But even now, like I'm out on my run, I've just started, I'm feeling my calves, you know, they are tight because I'm running a lot more because of this marathon and ultramarathon training. But I've got ways that I can counteract that, and I think that's what's, I need to walk back here because I stopped the watch. So I'm going to try and give you points that I think are going to help me and help you reduce your risk of injury as you progress in your running journey. Now, point one might sound a little counterintuitive, but go with me on it, because actually to avoid injury, you need to maintain some kind of semblance of the same training load, same training volume as you get older. A reduction of volume isn't really recommended because if you're a runner and if you're a runner for life, your body kind of needs it. And the less you're out there, you know, putting forces through your limbs and helping your muscles stay strong, the more you are susceptible to injury. So it's a bit counterintuitive to actually reduce your training volume, which kind of quite nicely segues me into my second point, I guess, is that if you want to keep going, instead of reducing actual volume, or if you run 3 days or 4 days a week, then you carry that on, instead of doing reduction of that, maybe you start thinking about reducing the intensity of your runs. So if you do 1 or 2 high intensity sessions a week, you might want to consider just doing 1, or you know, sometimes I'll go through a whole training block doing none. So it's intensity that you might want to think about reducing a little bit, and it, you know, that really depends on your body. My body doesn't like intensity, some people's does. Then you make the best decision for you, really. Another good thing you can do is start to optimize your nutrition before, after and during your running, because during, if you're doing a harder session or a longer session, you're going to need to fuel, and that is because technique breaks down when you're tired, and that's when you can get overuse injuries, when your muscles are tired and can't hold your movement patterns together. But you're looking at before and after, I'm thinking things like turmeric is great as a natural way of reducing swelling, antioxidants, leafy green vegetables, citrus fruit, all of these things have been shown to have a benefit on the body and therefore help you reduce your injury during the session. So I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I can't tell you exactly what to eat. You need to look into that for yourself, but certainly optimizing nutrition as you get older is going to help fight off injury.
And I suppose the final big problem, as I see it, that we all know, and I'm sure none of us want to accept, is that as you get older, things take a little bit longer to get warmed up, to get going, and I mean our running. So I have kind of a step-by-step process I like to go through before I do each of my runs that I think helps me make the most of my runs and not get injured, essentially. And the first thing is, when time allows, I tenderize my muscles a little bit, get them ready to go out. And by the way, I bought this with my own money, so please don't think it's some weird subliminal product placement. It's just the massage gun I use. There are plenty out there. And after I've got the muscles warmed up inside, what I like to do then is just get some drills going, whether it be mobility drills or some specific type of running drills. I like to sometimes do them usually before a hard session, if I'm honest, but I like to get that done before I even start running. And then I start running.
And then once I've started running, I do what should be blindingly obvious to us all, and that is I start very, very easily and I gradually build in. Even if it's an aerobic base run and I have a set pace I want to run, then I just do it really easily and build in. No stresses. Like I say, I'm getting on. I've got to do the right thing. So build in once you start running, regardless of the speed or distance you want to end up running, and you can't go too far wrong.
And if you found value in this video or you liked it, then you're definitely going to find value in this video here, which is the big problem with endurance training for runners, where we basically take another big problem as I see it and dismantle it so that there is no problems at all anymore. And obviously subscribe if you want to, but obviously you don't have to. That's how these things work. But I hope we did enough to convince you to stick around, and I'll see you next Sunday.